This tutorial training video from asrock.co.uk/C# where there are other training videos in the C# programming language. So let's go ahead and start up a new project here. File, new project. We'll make it a console application, and we'll call it Classes and Functions, or we could call it Methods actually. Part 2, don't really matter. And we'll hit OK. Now, here's the entry point for our application again, the static void main function within class program here. And we'll just right click on the Solution Explorer, right click on the solution there, Classes and Functions 2, add a class, and we'll call it again, continuing from the last tutorial, class person. And hit enter, and here we have a class person within the same namespace as our console application main function, so it's accessible. This namespace, anything within this namespace, for example the class person, is accessible within our static void main function, the entry point of the application, because they're both in the same namespace, and providing that for example here we'll create a public method, public void, which means it returns nothing, display message, and we'll create the function braces there, and the scope brackets. This is the scope of this display message function. Now we're going to say that we pass a string argument into this function, and the string is just a name, and we'll call the console class and the static function right line of the console class, and we'll pass in, we'll type hello space, and we'll use the array notation, which tells us that the next argument here, object argument 0, for example, we can create as many as we like here, object argument 1, object argument 2, object argument 3. So between these commas we would have the first member of the array, second member of the array, third member of the array, and fourth member of the array. Arrays are indexed from 0, but we're only going to pass in one, the first argument of the array at position 0, first argument of the array, and it's the name variable we're passing in to this function, display message. I just like to add bits in as we go along, but we will go over these ideas again and again. Now the main concept here is passing a variable to a function with and that function or method. I'm used to C++, what they're called functions, but a method, passing a variable to a method which is within a class here. Now we'll call our method here, but first we'll say console dot write what is your name, and we'll put a colon space like that. Now the write function or method of the console class, overloaded method here, the 17 overloads, static function can be called on class names. Static functions are called on class names as opposed to instances of classes which the programmer creates. Now this write function will just write this to the console, and it will not output a new line, so it will not go to the next line, it will stay on the line. It will say what is your name, and it will stay, the cursor for input cursor will stay on that line waiting for the input, and the input will be read by the console.readLine function that will read that input from the user. And I'm just going to go to the head, to the front here, and say string name, and we're using the assignment operator. So console.readLine will read the next line of characters from the standard input stream, which is the keyboard in this case, it will then return a string value, as you can see here. Returns a string value, const.readline returns a string value, and that string value will be stored in the variable name there, which is okay. This is a string name and we're returning a string, so that's fine, and this assignment operator means whatever's on the right hand side will be stored in whatever's on the left hand side. Now, so we've got that name there, and we'll create our person objects. P1 equals instantiate the object, new person objects, and we'll call our display message function method and pass in the name variable which we have retrieved from the console here. We'll pass it into display message, and just to stop this going off the end here, when I run it in the debugger, I'm going to just call readline so we can hold it in place to see what's happening. Now, if I just run this, we'll put a break. We'll put a breakpoint here. Now we'll put a breakpoint here, and we'll get. So just click on the side here, big red ball-shaped circle thing means the breakpoint. We'll hit the start debugging by pressing F5, and away we go. And you can see our console here. Nothing's happening at the console. Nothing's output yet. Now F11 here will step into functions which I have created, and F10 will step over functions which I have created. It will not step into functions. F11 will not step into functions which are of the .NET framework. So if I press F11 here, it will not step into the right function, which is a .NET framework function. But it will, just press F11 again, it will, okay, it's waiting for some input now, so John Richards, let's make up a name there, and press enter. So at the console here we've entered John Richards, we're on the next line, and now we are creating an object of type person. And now we'll press F11, we'll enter into display message, passing in John Richards as the parameter, because name here is now John Richards, passing it into display message. Press F11, and we're going to display message, constant right line. Notice name here is passed in as John Richards, and that will be put into this first position in the array. Name hello John Richards should be output at the console, not yet, but when we press the next F11 key, press F11, and we go to our console, and you can see hello John Richards is output to the console. Hello John Richards from this piece of code here. And we'll go here and press F11. We're back to our main function, waiting for something from the user. So console comes back up, hit the enter key, and we are going out of that function. So there's a little application on asking the user for some input, reading what the user inputs into the variable name, type string. These both sides of the equal sign, they must be of type string. Const.readline returns a string and stores it in string name. We instantiate an object of class person, and we pass in the variable that we read from the command line, the console, to the display message function, which is within class person. Just mouse over it. No, it's not telling us, but P1 is of type person. Display message is a member of class person, so it's called display message because it's not a static function. It's called on an instance of the class person, which P1 is an instance of the class person. You can have as many instances as you like, and you must use an instance to call a non-static function. And then console.readline. We'll just press here for stop debugging. Now I wanted to show you something here. Supposing I using the text toolbar, just comment out. So this is not code now, it's just comments. It will be ignored by the compiler. So if I go back to here and I mouse over display message, you'll get a little thing here which says generate method stub for display message. That's because it doesn't exist, because I just commented it out. By looking in here, we can see I commented it out. So if I just mouse over this, and let's see if we can get this to just, so I've said that this display message method in my code, I've said that it takes the parameter which it takes is a string of a string type. So when I generate the stub method, and I've also said it's a member of class person. So if I click generate the stub method, I go to class person, you'll see that it generates the stub method, which I'm going to call public. Right, so I didn't need to write, and I didn't need to write my own method. I could just generate a stub method and then type in my code. Well, I'm pasting it in because I've already done it, but I could just then type in that, and that would run exactly the same there. So you can, save time sometimes by getting the development environment to generate the stub methods before you input your code, and that would run exactly the same. So thank you for watching that video and passing a variable, reading a variable at the command line, passing it into a function, and passing it in passing it into a function which is a method which is a member of a class, instantiating the member of that class, instantiating an object, rather an instance of that class, and then calling a function on an instance of that class, passing in a variable, and that's how we do it. So next tutorial we'll be looking at passing variables to creating constructors, our own constructors, instead of just letting the development environment create its own default constructors. So we're creating constructors, passing in variables to constructors, and instantiating class data member variables. So thank you for watching. More videos at asrock.co.uk. C#.